At the end of the evening, assuming when the nightclub closed down, the girls invited Holly back to Coleen's home on Baycrest Drive. Or at least that is what Holly would have had us believe when this all got investigated down at headquarters. I don't have the specific and necessary details to understand exactly what went down that evening and how cozy the three of them were getting, or if they were simply just being remotely friendly. I don't know, because we only had Holly's account and maybe the verification of some random witnesses. I'm not sure. We don't understand exactly what happened that evening after the girls left the nightclub. So without the two key witnesses, Coleen and Elizabeth, we don't exactly know what did occur in that lovely home in the following morning hours. Needless to say, the girls obviously and apparently spurned Holly's apparent and sudden, very violent advances. And so the girls' rejection of Holly triggered Holly's fury in a very negative and violent way. Welcome to my channel. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel and to an episode of Missing Kids. And today we are going to discuss the tragic incident that occurred with two teen girls 50 years ago. This is the story of Coleen Lowry and Elizabeth Jean Lewis, both teenagers, 17 and 18, who were attending high school at the time of this tragic occurrence. It all began one cold winter Saturday in February, 50 years ago, when dance disco star Donna Summer's "Love to Love You" blared over the radio in a West End home. On that weekend, it was a teen girl, Elizabeth, who was spending the entire weekend at her best friend's house, Coleen Lowry. This would have been 3 years after the tragic incident that occurred to Donna and Wendy. And so it is, in my opinion, quite similar to that case. Could have been labeled as the good old days, and other wonderful songs that were topping charts that month were, they were singles charts. There were songs by artists like Paul Simon and Hot Chocolate, and those were very interesting times for the music industry as well. And so it was only natural that many young teenagers dreamt of going out to the nightclubs and dancing the night away. It happened that Coleen and Elizabeth were a couple of them. Weekend, Colleen's family, her parents, Gerald and Grace, and her sister, left these two teenagers home alone, which was nothing catastrophic. And they left the two teens alone in their lovely two-story Etobicoke home. And so they were visiting the family, the rest of the family was visiting relatives in Aurelia, out of town, and they simply trusted the two young women to be responsible and behave maturely. This was a tragic incident that might have occurred regardless of the situation, but there's just one tiny problem with the expectation of the Lowry family, and that is that these two girls weren't women. At that point in their young and short lives, had not yet had enough experience at being completely responsible. And so what I'm not understanding from these details that are very sparse and scarce is whether or not the girls drove or had licensed a license to drive, because that can make a bit of a difference to the story. We simply don't know if the girls had access to a car. We don't know any of that. And so it's kind of important to the way that this story unfolds. Girls were really just two young teens trying to act like women, but of course they really weren't. They were two high school students, and they both decided together to sneak out that night. It was Valentine's Day in 1976. The girls were excited. Coleen and Elizabeth felt like dancing the night away at a club that was tucked inside the amazing Howard Johnson's on Dixon Road, not too far away from their home, and very close to the airport. So I don't blame them. They didn't really do anything that millions of other teenagers haven't already tried to do all over the world. Question that I had about their driving would have probably either attracted attention from neighbors, or maybe however way that they reached that nightclub might have had an impact on how the story unfolded, how their tragic end actually was met. As the girls got ready to go out that night, little did they realize that a chance encounter at that very nightclub later on would bring about a similar fate that befell Donna and Wendy 3 years earlier at the other end of the city. The same nightclub, small dance club that I have had a very strong attachment to for a major part of my life. I just loved this nightclub. If you could drag out any of the friends that I had in those days, they would surely tell you I was very picky about nightclubs, and I would never go to a same nightclub twice if I didn't feel entirely safe and comfortable there. And in this place that Coleen and Elizabeth went to, it was my favorite nightclub. My day, which would have been 3 decades after this, it was known as Misty's, but I don't know what it was in those days. And so when it closed its doors, guys, right in the middle, the height of its popularity, all of my friends and I cried. We went there the last night in tears, and I just absolutely could not accept the fact that it finally closed down. I heard that it since reopened, and it was very popular with the tourists, which is another reason why I love going there. The tourists were usually business people staying at the hotel, passing through the city, and they were so nice. They were awesome, and it was always so much fun to go there and strike up a conversation with some of these families that we would run into. This was an incredible, a very, very comfortable place, very cozy, very safe, subdued, but such fun, with a very tiny, tiny dance floor and flashing, blinking colored lights, and it was very spectacular in its own way. The hits on the dance floor that I used to dance to with my friends were hits like Madonna's Celebration, and Like a Virgin, and Wigfield, and Jennifer Lopez, Crush. Remember that song by Crush, Jellyhead? And Taylor Dane, and so many wonderful others. It's no wonder I wanted to dance the night away there myself. Incidentally, all those wonderful songs are on my playlists. I never ever once walked away from that nightclub uncomfortable, feeling like I was being hunted down, and it was always packed. It was always packed, but it was not wild or crazy, but very, very classy and laid back. Not an immature crowd. It was more of a tourist crowd, more of a business crowd. And so, like some of the other chains in my city were filled with immature adults, and it gave the place a very uncomfortable and uncozy feeling, and that is why I was very picky about where I went to party at night. And usually my partying was limited pretty much to maybe 1 day a month. I'd want to pack in as much fun as I could, because this place did not have a reputation for being wild and crazy. In my day, I met up with so many friends at this club, and I also met new friends there. And some of them stuck, and some of them stuck much longer than others. And so one guy even once saved me from going up completely in flames when my long, flowery sleeve caught on the table candle flames. So luckily, he was sitting right at our table and saved my life. And I would round up my friends and head on down there. I assure you, in all the years that I went down there, I never, ever suffered anything close to a fate similar to the one that befell Elizabeth and Coleen. small group that I'm talking about in this story tonight actually met up there and passed through there absolutely floors me. It is very incredible for me to imagine such a scenario that could have turned into something dangerous. Who was it that these two gals met up with at this club way back in 1976? It was a much older man, to say the least, Harvey Lloyd Hawley, and he was a 29-year-old trucker, a married father of five. Married father of five. Oh my God. Coleen and Elizabeth could not have known that. I'm wondering if he knew that they were underage. Was very unusually quiet at the Lowry home the following morning. And that next day, an aunt who lived next door, and I remember at that time, it was very much a trend, in my city at least, that families lived next door to each other. That's kind of nice, isn't it? She was on her way over, delivering a Valentine's Day card for the Lowry family. And so she happened up the walkway and knocked on the front door. Just to say, no one answered the door. And so the aunt knew that the two girls had spent the night on their own. And I don't think it was a new situation at the Lowry home. And so a few minutes later, this same aunt discovered, I don't know how she managed to get in, but she was a relative, and so she discovered a horror within the walls of the Lowry home. Elizabeth was lying lifeless on the kitchen floor, and upstairs, Coleen was also lying lifeless in a second-floor bedroom. The teen girl had been strangled, and Coleen, who was discovered upstairs, had also been physically assaulted. She was violated. Because the girls are not here, we don't understand the full situation. I believe that the girls were witnessed at the club with the gentleman. I could call him something else, but with the man by the name of Harvey. And it's very sketchy after that. We don't know if the girls actually did agree to invite him over, or if maybe he followed them of his own accord when they got up to leave. I don't know what happened, but it's pretty apparent from the way that they gathered and walked out the door that they were leaving as a group. But we don't actually have those specific details, so your guess is as good as mine. It's so important to try to understand whether or not the girls had their own car that night or if they were hitching a lift, that horrible, dangerous thing, with this Harvey Holly. That the house had been pretty quiet all weekend and that nothing unusual happened, and they hadn't noticed any particular or peculiar comings or goings. But guys, that would probably be because the girls left late at night, probably after 10, 11 p.m., something like that, and came home in the wee hours of the morning when everybody else was asleep. And so nobody heard anything. In other words, the girls, if they screamed, nobody heard them. And so that doesn't tell us much. Take 11 days for authorities to charge Holly with 2 counts of first-degree causing lifelessness. Detectives had investigated that trucker for very, very, very carefully for other cold case connections to the 2 gruesome double murders that shared the same traits as this, similar traits as this 1976 Valentine's Day crime. And so that would have been Wendy and Donna, as well as a couple of others. But I'm only going to bring up this specific case because we've already discussed it way back in November. So it's this case that makes me realize that probably Wendy and Donna were also doing the same thing. However, those screams were heard by people living right beside the execution site around midnight. So if they did go to that nightclub at the Skyline, they didn't stay too long. The authorities did wonder if Holly had anything to do with those murders. Conviction carried a 25-year sentence for Holly, and he was indeed found guilty of the lifelessness of these 2 high school girls. And so justice, at least in this case, was met and done and served. And however, as for Holly, we really don't have too much. He would have probably been released 25 years ago, if that's the case. And so, I mean, this occurred 50 years ago. Yeah, it would have occurred about 20, he would have been let out about 24, 25 years ago. So there's no further record of his life after that. And probably that is being done to protect the identity and privacy of his living family. And I wouldn't want to say anything more at this point about Holly, because his relatives and his children, 5 of them, they're still alive. And so it must have been devastating to that family. But he did go to jail and he did do his time. So we can rest assured that at least in this case, that was done and dealt with. This brings my story today to an end, and I hope that you have enjoyed it and learned something from it. It was a very interesting story, and it broke my heart to realize that the nightclub in this particular story is my beloved nightclub of the Howard Johnsons. Thanks so much for listening and watching.